What if the most famous lost city was never meant to be found, yet left just enough clues to spark 2,000 years of searching? Picture an island empire beyond the known world, swallowed in a single day and night, its rings of stone and sea vanishing without a trace. Was it a real place erased by a disaster, a coded message from a philosopher, or a patchwork of true memories stitched into a legend that refuses to fade? The truth behind Atlantis is not a single answer, but a trail of evidence, misread maps, ancient fears, and modern dreams. Our only detailed source for Atlantis comes from the Greek philosopher Plato, writing in the 4th century BC in 2 dialogues named Timaeus and Critias. He places the story many centuries earlier, claiming it was passed down to the statesman Solon by priests from the Egyptian city of Sais. They spoke of a powerful island civilization beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which is what ancient Greeks called the Strait of Gibraltar. This civilization supposedly tried to conquer the Mediterranean, only to be defeated by a virtuous prehistoric Athens, and then destroyed by earthquakes and floods in a single day and night. Plato was not a historian, and his dialogues are crafted as teaching tools, but the detail of the description, the names, and the geography have kept researchers, explorers, and enthusiasts chasing the possibility that there was a real core to this tale. Plato describes Atlantis as a large island with a capital city arranged in concentric rings of sea and land, pierced by canals and topped by a central acropolis where a palace and a temple stood. He notes fertile plains, mountains rich in metals, and even mentions elephants, a detail that has puzzled readers. The Atlanteans, he says, grew wealthy, expanded their power, and eventually grew arrogant. They planned to subdue the Mediterranean, but an early Athens stood firm against them. Then nature turned. Earthquakes and floods overwhelmed Atlantis, and it sank in a single day and night. He dates the war to thousands of years before his own time, which may be symbolic or misremembered by way of translation. The level of architectural and geographic detail, along with the moral arc from prosperity to downfall, is why the story teeters between a detailed report and a crafted lesson. To grasp the truth behind Atlantis, we need to understand Plato's goal. He uses stories to teach ideas about ethics, politics, and the ideal city. Many scholars read Atlantis as an allegory, which means a story built to carry a message. In this view, Atlantis stands for wealth without restraint, advanced engineering without wisdom, and pride before disaster. The virtuous Proto-Athens is the model of balance and civic duty. But myth and history often weave together. Greek authors sometimes blended older tales, travelers' reports, and hearsay into cautionary narratives. It is possible Plato borrowed real memories of ancient disasters, such as volcanic eruptions and tsunamis, and stitched them into a moral tale. That still leaves us with key questions. How much is instructive fiction, and how much echoes real Bronze Age events that people remembered across generations? One candidate stands out for many researchers: the Bronze Age civilization on Crete, and the volcanic island we call Santorini, known in antiquity as Thera. Around the middle of the 2nd millennium BC, Thera erupted with immense force. The eruption shattered the island into a ring, sent ash across the region, and likely triggered waves that struck nearby coasts. The Minoans, a wealthy seafaring culture centered on Crete, had a remarkable city at Akrotiri on Thera with multi-story buildings, painted walls, and plumbing. Akrotiri was buried in ash and preserved. This event fits several themes in Plato's account: a maritime power, ring-shaped landforms, sudden destruction, and regional shock. The problem is that Plato's timeline places Atlantis far earlier than the Minoans, and his geography puts it beyond the Strait of Gibraltar. Still, cultural memory can stretch and shift. A disaster of this scale could echo across centuries, distorted yet persistent. Another proposal places Atlantis near the southwestern coast of Spain, in the wetlands of Doñana, not far from the mouth of the Guadalquivir River. Ancient writers mentioned a wealthy port culture in this region, often associated with Tartessos, a community known for metals and trade in the first millennium BC. Some researchers argue that a city built on low-lying ground could have been erased by earthquakes, floods, or shifting sediments, leaving patterns in the marsh that match concentric features. Satellite images have sparked debate, but natural processes can produce ring-like traces. This region also sits just inside the gateway of the Atlantic, close to Plato's landmark. Supporters connect a metal-rich landscape, links to Mediterranean trade, and recurring floods to the Atlantis story. Critics point to dating mismatches and the lack of clear monumental remains. The search here illustrates how regional myths, trade hubs, and changing coastlines can intertwine with the Atlantis legend. The Atlantic itself tempts the imagination. The Azores and the Canary Islands rise from deep oceanic volcanoes, and their dramatic forms invite speculation. Some argue that a now-submerged plateau once connected these islands, or that waves and quakes dragged a city under. Geological studies show these islands are the tips of volcanic mountains with steep flanks. Rapid sinking of a vast island is unlikely. Farther afield, enthusiasts point to the so-called Bimini Road in the Bahamas, a formation of beach rock that fractures into straight blocks and can look man-made from above. Others champion the Richat structure in Mauritania, a natural ringed dome eroded by wind and water, which mirrors the circular city in shape, but not in context. These sites illustrate the challenge. Nature produces patterns that resemble human design. Without clear artifacts, roads, walls, or inscriptions, a pattern alone is not proof of a lost civilization. We know that cities can sink or drown. Off the coast of Egypt, divers found the drowned port of Thonis Heraklion, a trading hub that slid into the Nile Delta in antiquity and lay buried under mud for centuries. In Greece, the site of Pavlopetri preserves streets and buildings under shallow water from the late Bronze Age. In Jamaica, the city of Port Royal collapsed into the harbor after an earthquake in the late 17th century AD. These are real, excavated places. Underwater archaeology uses sonar to map the seafloor, then sends cameras and divers to verify targets. Researchers log artifacts, date them, and analyze sediments to understand how a site was lost. This methodical approach produces evidence, not just shapes. If Atlantis were real and urban scale, we would expect walls, tools, inscriptions, and recognizable layers. The fact that we have found other drowned cities, but not Atlantis, is telling, though not decisive. Atlantis endures because it sits at the edge between what is possible and what is hoped for. In the 19th century, the writer Ignatius Donnelly argued that Atlantis was a mother civilization behind Egyptian and American cultures, a claim that appealed to grand theories, but does not fit the archaeological record. In the early 20th century, mystics and fringe groups added spiritual layers that further detached the legend from evidence. In popular culture, Atlantis became a canvas for ideas about advanced technology, lost wisdom, and the sea as the last frontier. Today, archaeologists see no firm proof of a vanished high civilization beyond the Strait of Gibraltar in deep prehistory. The most reasonable view is that Plato crafted a moral narrative, informed by real disasters such as the Thera eruption, by memories of long-gone ports swallowed by the sea, and by the timeless human fear of nature's power. New tools, such as detailed seafloor mapping and careful excavations on changing coasts, continue the search. The truth behind Atlantis is less about a single sunken city, and more about how the ancient world remembered catastrophe and how we project our hopes onto the map. That tension between memory, meaning, and evidence is why the legend keeps calling us back.